Hi, everyone. Welcome to tonight's mindfulness and resilience practices class. Oh, I'm admitting more people. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Frank, and I'm here with Vivian. Hi, Vivian.
Hello, Frank. Hi, everyone.
So we'll say a few introductory comments. If you're new here, welcome.
Oops.
And if you're returning, welcome back. What we're going to do tonight is suitable for any level of knowledge or practice, any skills. We want to make these things really accessible. So I don't remember what our topic is for this month because I don't have control of the slides. So I'm going to hand it over.
Obstacles into allies.
Oh, that's the whole month. Yeah. Okay. So this month's theme is turning obstacles into allies, and tonight's specific talk is Vivian is going to talk about ways to work with craving and aversion. And with that, I hand it over to you, Vivian.
Thank you, Frank. So, yeah, just kind of going back to the broader topic of obstacles, knowing that just having a human body and a human mind creates obstacles. How are we supposed to incorporate them into our practice, be with them, build a relationship that is optimized, I guess, for moving forward and going deeper into our practice. And so each week we're going to kind of hit obstacles from a different angle. This one being craving and aversion really being two sides of the same thing. It's, being pulled out of your homeostasis, your neutral place of being, either by something that's drawing you into wanting and seeking out something in particular, or keeping something at bay or avoiding something altogether, that being aversion. So cravings arise in 1,000 different ways. Whatever can come through your senses can induce a craving. There are sounds you love and sounds you don't. There's tastes you love and tastes you don't. Visuals that you enjoy and those that you don't. And there are people, interactions that you love and those that you find challenging. So you've got people, places, circumstances, things are constantly drawing you that you prefer. And on the other side, there's those same things that you don't want or you want to minimize. And this is true for everything out there, from the single cell organism, right? It's always moving towards things that help it grow and recoiling from those things that are challenging or that it finds to be a threat, to the most complex, arguably human beings being one of the most complex organisms on the earth. It's a fundamental phenomenon and fundamental truth. So what do we do with that, given that it's what is? I mean, even if you think about it, even trees and flowers and all of that have that nature. So if we're constantly wanting more of the good stuff and want the good times to never end, we're highly motivated to also stop the things that we don't want or the difficult things and be avoidant sometimes even of those things. Actual true neutrality is very rare, and there are areas of thought that actually believe it actually doesn't even exist. We're actually just not when we consider something neutral, it's that we haven't sensitized ourselves to how pleasant or unpleasant we're experiencing it. So we're experiencing it as neutral, but it's actually a desensitization. So if you were desensitized enough, you could always tell if there's something that you actually want. So I was just thinking about like the tossing of a coin and, picking sides. And then when you toss the coin, and what is the thing before you even reveal which side was the one that came up? What is it that you actually wanted? There's always a little bit of a preference going on. And so the one thing I ask you to think about in this moment, through your sense gates, whatever it may be, what is stronger in you right now? So there might be something that you're craving in your visual sense gate, or there's something that you want to avoid in your auditory sense gate or your olfactory sense gate. So they're always competing, right? They're always kind of moving and shifting and changing. And what I want you to think about, if you can even tune into it, is which one is actually your default. Because we're creatures of habit. There are things that we enjoy and things that we don't. We have proclivities towards pleasant and unpleasant, right? Are you the kind of person that eats your least favorite thing on your plate and then eat, you believe in, you kind of work with delayed gratification and eat the delicious stuff later? Are you the one that wants to eat the delicious stuff now and, leave the stuff or go in the order of least or most liked to least liked? And I'm working with the senses. This is going on in our thinking as well all the time, but I think it's more accessible when we work with our actual physical senses. And that's why you're going to hear me speaking about it in terms of our physical senses. Before I move on, Frank, do you have any thoughts about kind of the broader categories of craving and aversion?
You mentioned something in this territory. One of the things I think about is that craving and aversion is built in at a cellular level. And so when you think about how many cells we have in our body, that's like an exponential increase. And one of the ways I relate to neutrality is I often think of it as either I'm not paying attention, right? Something is neutral because I'm not paying attention. And if I did, if it's still neutral, it means to me that it's really subtle. And as you were saying, like sensitizing ourselves to the subtlety and recognizing that at any time, once I'm adequately sensitized, I'm going to lean in or lean away from it. I'm going to like it or dislike it in relative amounts. And I think about like equanimity, and our practices are about can we manage that leaning forward, leaning back, and let things be the way they are, whether we like them or not, whether they're pleasant or unpleasant. And craving and aversion are like the extremes on that continuum. I want something, but then when I really want it, that's the craving. And something might not be for me, but really not liking it, trying to get away from it is aversion. And I almost feel like we tend to not, I'm not sure about the truthiness of this, but what came to mind is that we may not even know where we stand until we start moving. So, that notion of, I'm leaning forward, I'm starting to move in the direction of the pleasant, I'm starting to really move in the direction of craving, I might not notice it until I'm pretty well down that road. And part of these practices are, how can I notice that sooner and have choices about what happens next?
And one more thing I wanted to add is the idea, to expound on the neutrality thing, saying that we're not sensitized enough. I don't want anyone to walk away thinking, I need to get so sensitized that I know exactly what's happening at all times. The mind does this on purpose. There's things that are very important, lesser important, the least important things. that it's indifferent towards. It doesn't see it as a threat. It doesn't see it as a pleasure-inducing thing. It'll categorize as neutral. So I don't want anyone to take away that somehow, when I say we're desensitized, that somehow there's a deficiency happening.
Yeah, I think of that as it's not a problem. It's an observation. It's not a problem.
Yes. None of this is a problem. Craving and aversion aren't a problem either, right? These are just, think of them as electrical impulses that the brain is organizing based on prior experience and expectations, beliefs that cause those signals to fire. So if you say you like an apple, right? Or you think, if I say apple, what does it conjure up for you? Some people love apples, some people don't. It's all the memories and experiences coming in to inform what is my experience of an apple. I had a very interesting relationship with rice because I grew up on rice. And then when I went into the monastery, they served rice every day. And I never liked it growing up, and I didn't like it in the monastery. And it was this constant thing that was kind of, and then one day, as I was sitting with my bowl of rice, it dawned on me that this thing that I really had such a aversive, more like tolerant relationship towards had been nourishing me my whole life. It was like this state of lack of gratitude that I uncovered. Being in stillness and realizing, oh my gosh, it's been here all the time in this supportive way. And I've been like, So just to say that our relationships with things shift and change over time. And there's nothing wrong with the things that you like and the things you don't. We all have preferences. So we actually need both craving and aversion. That's why there's nothing wrong with having them. And they come and go, is their nature. And what we can do, we can offer our awareness to the flow of the change between one or the other, rather than whatever that thing is that's actually triggering it. So, for example, a person that you're not fond of crosses your path, right? Instead of kind of focusing on that object that's triggered your aversion in the moment, focusing on that change that's happened within yourself in that moment. So it doesn't become about the thing that triggered it, and it's more about you taking note and recognizing how it shifted your relationship internally. If there was only craving or only aversion, your actual senses would get dulled out. So I want you to think of craving and aversion as sense sharpeners, right? And so it makes them pretty useful, not just neutral things, but actually a really useful tool. Where we get into trouble is when we start getting attached to the things that we really, really want, or having things turn out a particular way or show up a particular way, or people showing up a particular way. When we get attached to that, that's where all the frustration, resentments, sadness, all the difficult emotions arise. It's not so much in the craving, it's in the being very rigid and attached to the idea that this craving arose, but it's got to be that way. Same thing with aversion. I really don't want this to be here, but okay, I don't want it to be here. And this is how it's arising inside of me, this feeling of not wanting. But how many ways am I relating to this thing, like rice, in a way that's actually closing me off to my own experience of the fullness of that thing? Frank?
I'm thinking of flexibility, right? As you're talking. So one is these things are inevitable, which is why it's really helpful not to problematize them. And that what we're cultivating with these practices is flexibility. And being careful about the attachment. I think about like
Yeah.
when I'm hungry, craving might be too big a word, but to use that word for now, when I'm hungry, I'm craving food. And then my state changes as I get more full. So again, that's not a problem, that's an observation. But sometimes I eat a lot more than I need to for reasons, right? Either for nutritional purposes or mostly recreational purposes, recreational eating. And the flexibility allows us to, like, as we're leaning forward to, I don't know that catch ourselves, because that sounds like I caught myself in a problem, but to not attach to the outcome or the relationship to, in this example, food, but be able to lean back a little bit and like let this be finished, let this move on.
Yeah. That's a really great example, I think, in relation to how and taking note, how often in the day am I actually eating for nourishment and how many times a day am I eating for recreation? I think that's a really good thing to observe, right? And then seeing what happens, seeing how it pans out for you, and then modifying as you see fit if needed, right? The other part I think that we also kind of get tangled up with is emotions. And so if you think about when you're experiencing anger, anger is such a big emotion that a lot of times we get caught up around the trigger that brought on the emotion of anger, as opposed to actually recognizing anger is a part of me. It's part of this human operating system. It's here, happens to be here right now. What is the best way for me to tend to it in this moment? Or any emotion, even when you're feeling a positive emotion. Ooh, this is a good emotion. I'm enjoying this particular feeling. How can I relish it, savor it a little more? How can I be present for it a little more so I can really get the full juice out of the squeeze of this experience?
I was just thinking of
Yeah.
the experience of sadness and how crying, for example, I really enjoy crying. I don't always enjoy what I'm crying about, but I think that's one of the things that certain kinds of music or certain kinds of movies really help with, right? They create the state, and we can really enjoy that emotional state, even if, say, in everyday life, we'd rather not. I think part of it
Right.
is the content isn't like my life. And the other part is it's time limited. It's like the duration of that 5-minute song or, the 90 minutes of that movie. But that's an example of what you're talking about, where we have like a habitual relationship to something, that if we have flexibility, if we can notice, in tonight's example, the moving toward or moving away from, we can actually reduce our aversion to unpleasantness and increase our enjoyment of pleasantness if we cultivate that flexibility.
Yeah. And now that you say that, I need a good cry. So please share your favorite sad movies in the chat. I'm serious. I would love to. Because I was thinking, I remember Sophie's Choice when you were talking about sad movies. That is guaranteed to make me cry. Some Bollywood movies can really make me cry.
So we've got so far only a comment about Sophie's Choice, which is that it's traumatizing, which right would either be crying or sobbing or just no to that choice.
It just gave me the creepy crawlies just thinking about it. Like, it came out of my mouth. Apologies if I triggered anybody. But like, for me, it just gave me the creepy crawlies just to remember it. I haven't seen it in a long time.
Here's another one, Beaches.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think I remember Beaches. I'll have to
Yeah.
collect all the suggestions. Oh, Brian's
Yes.
song. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I don't know if I've seen that one.
That's from the 1900s.
I think all of these are from the 1900s. Just
Oh, that's
saying.
true. Yeah. Um, The Wind Beneath My Wings. So that was a song. And then Schindler's List. Yeah, I think of that right up
Yes.
there with Sophie's Choice. Well, it's a little different.
It's different, but it is.
Yeah,
Oof.
the choice. It didn't have the choice.
So yeah, so keep them coming because I do need them. Um, and to Frank's to Frank's point, they are helpful to cry sometimes. So, what effect does it have when we're actually practicing? Because we're experiencing craving and aversion at all times, and then we sit down to do these practices, it doesn't all of a sudden lift from us. And I can tell you, it never lifts from anyone. All that happens is that you become much more adept at noting it, recognizing it, and tending to it in real time if needed. So that's what's guaranteed to happen over time, is that you become a little more sensitized to yourself so that you can catch it and you can tend to it. But in the meantime, the effects on practice is that you get caught up in the idea of wanting distractions to go away, whether they're internal or whether they're external. I'm just 1,000 examples are rushing through my mind. That's why I paused. I'm like, let's keep going. Or you start clinging to the good feelings and you're like, oh, this is exactly what meditation is all about. Oh, this is so nice. And as soon as that happens, you've been snatched by this little polarity that's going on between craving and aversion, right? Or having a certain idea, notion about how the practice period should go. So basically judging the experience, not recognizing that the benefits arise from actually doing the practice, not so much about what the outcomes or the perceptual outcomes are of having done the practice. More often than not, you're not going to see the benefits of your practice, the true deep benefits of your practice, until you kind of look back over an extended period of time. You might have a really wonderful meditation here or there, or all the time, and that's a really great motivator to kind of induce those good feelings. But it might not be the case all the time. And the hope is that regardless of what you meet when you sit down to do a mindfulness practice, that you do it for the sake of doing it and no other reason. So, Frank, any thoughts on effects on practice?
No, but there are some more movies.
Oh,
Pay
okay.
It Forward, Steel
I haven't seen that.
Magnolias, Terms of Endearment, Life is
That one.
Beautiful,
Oh, yeah.
Jojo Rabbit.
I haven't seen that one.
And then here's where I got stuck. So I'll say this in passing because I got
Yeah.
stuck. I go, is Old Yeller sad or just hideous?
I didn't see
I
it.
don't know if you know.
It's about the dog, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so what constitutes a sad movie? Is it an abundance of sadness or is it that ending? Oh, here's Thelma and Louise. Though, is that sad or isn't that like, yay at the end? Let's fling ourselves off the cliff.
We don't want anybody to kill themselves.
So I think this is in reference to Old Yeller, sad, still traumatized since childhood. Yeah. Yeah, there were trigger warnings then.
Topic to get. Yeah, I was going to say, I think
and
I
it was Disney.
Wrong...
Like normally Disney kills everybody's parents off screen before the story starts. But Old Yeller was a total betrayal. So sorry to digress.
No, I appreciate it because I don't have line of sight to the chat. So I do feel bad if this conversation is triggering anyone. I hope not, but if it is, I'm sorry.
We'll have to then counter it with the opposite, which
Yes.
is what's a movie that makes you smile or
Yes.
laugh?
Put that in now.
Because
Share that.
that's
What are
that's the
your
flexibility,
funniest?
right?
Yes. Let's have some laughs too. Please share those in the chat as I share about the how we're going to work with these sensations. So we're going to work with flow, and flow is any change that you experience either internally, like on the inside of the body, or externally on the surface of the body, or in the mental imagery or thoughts, the internal dialogue that you're experiencing. You're going to note flow, that is change, through all your sense gates. Any shifts, any movements, those are going to be categorized as flow. And obviously, there are shifts and changes in sounds. There'll be moments where I'll be guiding. There'll be moments of silence. So if you happen to note the shift from sound to no sound, or from one sound to the next, so maybe you're listening to the guidance, I stop, but all of a sudden you hear the hum of the air conditioner or something to that effect, or the ticking of the clock. That would be considered flow because you're taking note of all the shifts and changes that are happening. That's with sound, but obviously it's constantly happening in our felt sense, in our bodies. A lot of times we can feel the sensations of our breath somewhere, whether it's at our belly, at our chest, or in our nostrils. You can also do this practice with your eyes open and note where your visual acuity lands, where the focus falls. So at any given point, it might be on something close or something far, something to the sides, up and down. As that attention shifts from one focal point to the next, you can note that as flow as well. And of course, you can work on noting the shifts of emotions that might be arising. So whether it's the same emotion kind of taking on a different contour or different intensity, or different emotions that might be flowing through, taking note of that, or any changes that are shifting in attention between the physical sensations, the thoughts, or the emotions, you can note that as well.
No,
Right.
except that I experience flow as pleasant. Right?
And
We talk.
that's,
Uh-huh.
yeah, go ahead.
Well,
Sorry.
we talk about there are like layers to practice, right? So there's my relationship to pleasant and unpleasant, but I'll use unpleasant as an example. I can have another layer, which is appreciating the skillfulness with which I am in relationship to the unpleasant. So one of the things that ends up happening is the pleasant gets amplified through practice and flexibility and flow.
All right. So now that Frank has shared the final chapter, I think we're good to go. But yeah, that's basically the hope. The output of this practice is that you recognize when you stand back and you're seeing everything as flow, something shifts in how you relate to it all. And hopefully it's pleasant. Although we don't know, right? Because when we practice, 3 options. Things will get better, they'll stay the same, or they'll get worse. Guaranteed, one of those 3. But how do we practice? So just get comfortable in stillness or in slow movement. What we mean by slow movement is any speed, anything that you might be doing, do it about 10 to 15% slower. When we do things at the speed that are natural to us, the mind is more prone to going into autopilot and moving you out of a state of concentration. So if you are going to do movement, do it really intentionally and very slowly. Well, not very slowly, but 10 to 15% slower at the very least than you usually do it. Your eyes can be open or closed with this practice. And all you have to do is listen to my voice. There will be moments where I will be silent, and that's just to give you some time to work with the prompt and see what the mind does with it and where it goes. And all you have to do is notice what's happening and maintain as gentle, friendly, and as curious of a mindset that you can in relation to whatever happens to show itself. Knowing that from the perspective of mindfulness, there isn't a thing we're trying to induce to happen. We're really bearing witness and taking stock of what's already here. And if for any reason it doesn't feel comfortable or circumstances shift for you, you're more than welcome to shift to another practice, knowing that we're here to support each other, to do the thing that's most nourishing for us in this moment. But if you want to stop, you're always welcome to stop, and you'll have this recording as a reference, so you can always come back to this practice. And with that, let's do some practice. So I invite you to take a few deep breaths just like that, inhaling in a deep but comfortable breath and exhaling out. With a sigh, if it's comfortable. Your sigh doesn't have to be as long as my sigh. And stretching up and then settling in and finding a comfortable position. Relaxing the shoulders, relaxing the jaw. And we can do this by gently opening our mouths a little bit or placing the tip of our tongue on the roof of our mouths. If the eyes are closed, notice if they're still looking even though the eyes are closed, and allowing them to fall back into their sockets. Inviting some relaxation to any muscles that aren't engaged in keeping you upright. If you're laying down, just letting all those muscles just melt down. Taking a few deep breaths here as well. Inviting ease and alertness. So we're going to limit our focus to our somatic landscape, that is our body. And whenever you're ready, disconnecting your attention from thoughts and allowing the attention to just go deep into the body itself. We're going to start by sensitizing ourselves to this body. And we'll start by tuning into a local area, so either the feet or the hands are always good. And without moving them, notice any and all sensations that are arising to meet your attention at the hands or the feet. So there may be sensations on the inside like tingling, pulsing, movement, undulation. There may be sensations on the outside as well, like tickling. You might feel the sense of air or even the temperature. What kind of sensations are you experiencing at your hands? You can ask your question of your mind, do the sensations at my hands imply any sort of shapes without moving the fingers or the palm? Can you tune in to the raw physical sensations to get an idea of what the hand feels like? So if the answer is yes, I can sense into the shape of my hand. It's a possibility. And for some of us, we just experience it like a blob. And that's okay too. And notice if something else comes in, that is the thinking to impose the shape of a mental image of your hand. So beginning to use this question of, do I sense the contours of my hand to imply a shape, using it to distinguish the physical sensations from any thoughts of what a hand or what my hand looks like. Taking a moment to do it with either your other hand or your feet or another body part. Do these sensations actually show me the shape of that part of my body? Now opening up in that same way of that attention to the entire body, and letting your attention to freely flow wherever it wants to go on the body, inside the body, noticing any physical sensations or emotional sensations. Whatever happens to be calling your attention today, staying curious and somewhat open, maybe even welcoming, letting it all be here. Noticing that we can experience the body from within it. We don't have to go up into thoughts and thinking to actually feel into it. See if you can experience the body like a field of a bunch of sensations coming together. And as you begin to notice any of the movements, particular sensations of any kind, you can label that as flow whenever you notice it. And when you experience a shift from one to the next, that's yet another change, and you can label that as flow. Remembering that when we label, we can say them out loud with our full voice. We can say them out loud softly in a whisper or quietly to ourselves in our mind. I invite you to experiment with which one really keeps you attuned to the physical sensations. And if it feels better to just feel the sensations without using a label, you can do that as well. The labels are there to help us stay on track. And when you do notice a flow sensation, see if you can sink into that experience a little deeper. Give it a moment so that you can kind of be with it before you move on to the next one. So you can stay with one particular area of the body, like the hands or the feet, or you can really open up your attention to wherever the mind catches a physical sensation and labeling it, and then sinking into it. So as you're noticing these internal movements, recognize that you're not looking for anything special, any unique physical sensation, and that if it's hard to touch into any bodily sensations, you can always notice the breath or notice the heartbeat. If it helps to experience it, you could put your hands on your belly or your chest to experience them. Finding flow wherever it arises. And then settling. And trying to maintain a balance between concentrating on the qualities of the physical sensation and letting it go. So not holding on too tightly, allowing other sensations to move in and come into your attention. We don't want to bear down on any particular one, whether it's pleasant or not. We don't want to grasp. We want to give it all permission to spread and move whatever way it wants. It's very possible that we're going to get distracted. Our attention's going to get pulled away. And recognizing that's not a problem either. Letting the judgment go and gently bringing the attention back to the flow of these physical sensations. If distraction does happen and you catch yourself and you bring it back, notice what shifts when you come back. Is there a sense of relief or relaxation, or maybe some gratitude or something else that arises? Oh, I'm back. And if anything unpleasant is arising, experiment with looking into it deeper, noticing its flow qualities. What are the elements of that unpleasantness? Is it agitation or pinching or tingling or tension? Maybe it feels like a constriction or a throbbing that is unpleasant. These are just some ideas. I just invite you to turn your attention to its contours. And if the unpleasantness is too much, you always have the option and choice to turn away. Go to an area that's neutral or pleasant. If you happen to notice that there's a bearing down on the sensations, like you're latching onto it, it's okay, but see if there's anything you can let go of to help remove the barrier, so to allow for you to experience the flow, the coming and going of the fullness of this experience. So if you can put that down, lay it down. If you can't, I invite you to move your attention into another area in the body. You don't want to be fighting with any thoughts. Remembering that every moment brings forth a whole batch of physical sensations, whether they're linked to thoughts or memories or physical bodily experiences. Or emotions, so you can also note the flow of your emotions now. Is there any emotions arising? Is there any constriction happening, releasing, or shifts and changes happening? Noting the ever-changing landscape of our emotional body. You can note joy, agitation, frustration, happiness, glee, whatever may be calling your attention right now. Now going a little deeper, turning to the more subtler aspects of flow, Just letting yourself go along for the ride for just these last couple of minutes. Hold your whole body in your awareness so you're not focusing on the surface or the inside or any particular part. Zooming out or zooming in, but taking it all in. And looking for all the different currents of changes and shifts that the body is experiencing right now. It might be hard to hold the whole body in our attention, and that's okay. Just keeping a light touch, just to bring a little challenge into the practice. And as we begin to shift the practice, if your eyes are closed, allowing just a little bit of light to come into your eyes, but noticing that this is change and this is a shift as well. So staying with that awareness of flow. And then slowly allowing a little more light in. Becoming aware of the space that you're in. These bigger shifts and changes from this deepened practice period to moving your attention externally. Noticing how you're feeling. Offering yourself a little bit of gratitude for taking the time to practice today.